Cool. Well, welcome to the Hire Talents podcast, optimizing hiring results for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. Today, I'm super excited to have Shane Metcalf. He's the Chief Culture Officer and founder of 15Five. They're a performance management software and consulting business. And I think it's great to have Shane on today because a lot of companies we're facing. How do we have a more effective workforce now that many of us are going fully remote or maybe a hybrid model? Can we be truly more effective and have better results in that environment than we did in the in-person one? So we're going to get to explore that with Shane today. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Really good to be here, Fletcher.
Awesome. So, I always want to open, how did you get into this business? I love performance management, but how did this become your mission?
Yeah, man, I am still asking myself that question. How did this happen? You look, I've had a very nonlinear career path. I did not, in high school be like, I'm going to go to the college so I can get a degree in business and so that I can then work my way up through startups and then found my own company. And because I love HR, that's going to be the focus. I had a very nonlinear career path, as I just said. Yeah. And it was really, I did a lot of different things. I was in private equity and clean technology, but it was actually being in the Bay Area, dropping out of the business world and going deep into personal development, transformation work, interpersonal community, Burning Man, all the freaky underbelly subcultures of the Bay Area and having no career. It was like a 5-year gap on my resume. And all of that led me actually to becoming a coach because, you work so much on yourself, you transform yourself, you think deeply about what you want in life and how do you get what you want in life. And then it's a kind of, for me, coaching was the first thing that synthesized all the different aspects that I worked on in myself and turned it into a form of service.
Wow. Yeah.
And so,
common theme on this show, man. A lot of coaches and a lot of people talk about, the self-realization, awareness, creating mission and purpose for themselves. And it sounds like you had quite a journey in that. You had to explore a lot of different counterculture and traditional and a little bit of everything past to figure that out.
Yeah, definitely. And so 15Five, is actually really one of my friends, Casey Baker, who was a friend of mine, and we were hanging out, and she just met this guy and started dating him, and his name was David Hassel. And David seemed like a cool guy, entrepreneur. And so I meet up with him, and I'm working on a webinar called Supercharged, which is about energy management for entrepreneurs. And I meet David and I start telling him about, I'm like, dude, you got to start taking cold showers and you got to do this body weight training app from this guy, Mark Lauren, called You Are Your Own Gym. And David loved those things. He was like, oh, this is really cool. This guy must know what he's talking about. And so we meet and we develop a friendship. And then one day I ask him, hey, how can I help you? And he's like, well, actually, I just literally got off the stage publicly launching my company 15Five, and I need somebody to coach all these executives that are signing up for the product. And I'm like, And he kind of described who he was looking for. And I was like, okay, do I go left or do I go right and put my ring in the hat? And I did. 3 days later, we were working together and the rest is history. And so we've been building this company for the last 8 years together. And what has been really interesting is that David gave me carte blanche to basically guinea pig on the culture.
Yeah.
I wasn't running culture from the beginning. I ran
to integrate it into the company, but also to teach your clients this too.
Yeah, sure. And so, basically what I did is I imported a lot of the social technologies to create trust, vulnerability, and connection that I picked up from these freaky subcultures and authentic relating and this wild place called One Taste that, if you Google it, it's going to be a whole can of worms.
So don't forget to check that out, everybody.
Yeah. It's it's going to bring up a whole other set of interesting interview questions. But I had these interesting social technologies, and I started applying them in building our own culture.
Okay.
And what happened was people started having deeper conversations. People started revealing themselves, like, because essentially it's about creating opportunities for people to self-reveal.
Okay.
Traditionally work, we put on our suit and we put on our facade. We have our professional masks that we go to work with, because that's how we've been conditioned and taught for, decades and decades. If you want to be successful, put on the mask.
Okay. So are you advocating to like
take off the mask
and allow yourself to be maybe a little exposed from a personal perspective at work then? I mean, to open
absolutely.
up and share like what you do on the weekends and your hobbies and your
and it's
interests and things.
And there's an important term I use, which is self-reveal, which is giving people the permission, creating a psychologically safe space and giving the people the option, but not forcing people. You meet people where they're at and invite them to step into a little bit more vulnerability and allow themselves to be seen. And magic happens. And of course, personal boundaries are really, really important.
Yeah, because that could get sticky, right?
Look, it's like, it can get sticky, which is why there's an art to it. But it's also, the myth of work-life balance has been very destructive, because basically the shadow of work-life balance is saying, look, we actually only care about you as a professional. We want this to be a transactional relationship. You give us what we want. And, oh, by the way, we're going to take more from you than we're going to give to you.
Okay.
And then, we're not responsible for positively influencing your life outside of the office. And that, I think, is bunk, because we spend a third of our lives at work.
At work. Yeah. I think this is an interesting concept. I mean, so I've interviewed 10,000 job candidates, right? And at the end of the day,
which is like 100,000 hours. So you're like a master interviewer.
Yeah. It's about 10,000. It's about 10,000 hours. Yeah. It's about 10,000 hours. No, probably maybe a tenth of those have been like deep dives, like top grading style, like 2+ hour interviews. Right. And the rest of those, actually, we've consolidated, and I don't want to get too off track, but we've like top grading some of Lou Adler's stuff. My father wrote a book on this. So like an amalgamation of like these really great people who know a lot about, interviewing and assessing people. And anyways, I shortened it to like a 30-minute interview, and we call it the Power Interview Guide. Because, if you're going to interview 10,000 people, like I don't have 100,000 hours to do it. I'm only,
that's great. I'm interviewing a CMO candidate right after we get off this podcast.
Good. Well, we may or may not have time. I can give you some suggestions, but the point is to what you were saying is one of the epiphanies that I had, like maybe, I don't know, halfway or 3/4 of the way through this journey, is like, we're all humans, and we're all looking at, how do I improve my own quality of life, right? That's human nature. Every human being, we all want to figure out, how do I get from here to over here, right? And then continue that journey, hopefully in a positive, trajectory. And now that's an interesting thing, because it's different for everybody though, right? How do I improve my quality of life is different from one person to the next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, because there are kind of universal human needs, but how those needs show up and which ones are currently met and which ones are below, we've tapped into the reserves and which are just completely empty. Varies to an infinite degree. And work-life balance is one of those that is a continuous trend. So I think it's interesting you bring it up, and blending the personal and the work, and literally. Well, and again, look, in 2020, work-life balance was completely, nuclear bomb just killed it. Because all of a sudden, work was at home. The lines are blurred. The lines got really blurry, but they were always blurry. We were just in denial, because we're, it's one life. It's not like I have work and then I have life. It's like, no, work is life. Life is work.
Well, I've got nothing else to do too, right? During COVID, we wrote a book and like did crazy stuff and like worked actually probably harder. Especially at first. You're like, I don't know what to do with myself.
Average hour, daily work hours went up, I think 2 or 3 hours across the board. And which is, again, all the more reason why we need to get good at building our cultures and our experience of work such that it is contributing to our experience of a positive experience of life versus, you know, I like to say soul awakening versus soul crushing, you know, because we all know like soul crushing is something that every single professional has probably experienced in their lifetime.
Yeah. And I think, so tell me, okay, so, I mean, I had an epiphany, like, and I just brought this up. I just did a podcast like right before you. So I'm like back-to-back recordings. I'm like same subject here. Well, not different subjects, but she was all about energies. How do you get from like this victim energy level to this dreamer and awakened energy level? And you familiar with this concept?
You know, I'm a big fan of a variety of models that talk about the vibratory spectrum of human consciousness. So
I think it's along those lines, you know, and I think there's different ways of talking about it. And I think it's taught in all different types of religions. And so, but I had this
but I do think is really important is given the number of different systems that talk about these different levels of consciousness, whether it's like life happens to me as a victim or life happens for me, you know, to the shadow, to the gift frequencies.
Whether I'm serving others or it's all about myself. And then do I have vision? And I think the vision piece is the thing that I think is really everybody, all the coaches, all the business leaders I bring on. I mean, we all talk about the same thing. Now, sometimes they're talking about creating mission and vision and purpose and core values for a business. But then one of the things I realized in my own life is, bringing this back, these memories back to me, is early in my career, I think the first 12 years of my career, I was a freaking workaholic. I mean, like work. I mean, no time. It probably destroyed my first marriage. You know, and put me into a terrible place for many years. And, you know, I was going through marriage counseling with my first wife, and, you know, we were trying to salvage the relationship. We didn't like hate each other. It just, you know, had deteriorated to this, you know, terrible place, you know, and the counselor asked us to go back and do a 10-year life vision, right? Like, what do you want out of life? Where are you going? Right. And that was the most, it was, I didn't even think anything much of it at the time, but it was like the most awakening exercise I've ever done. And it took me like 10 minutes to do. Literally took me 10 minutes to do. I wrote down, like, I want to live by the water. I want to have, you know, work-life balance. I want to, you know, work first.
And hey, look at your Zoom background, man. You got by the water.
Exactly. No, totally. No, I do. I live in a beautiful place called Surfside, California. I'm staring out at the ocean. As soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go surfing. So, you know,
for reals?
Yeah, for real. So that's exactly what I'm going to do as soon as we're done with this conversation.
Yes.
I can't wait to get off the phone with you, and so I can get out there.
We'll try to speed this up then.
Exactly. But no, this is a lot of fun too. But so yeah, you know, I want to, you know, have a family. You know, I didn't have any kids. You know, I want to be part of my community or have multiple communities, and you know, I want to have that balance. And work was part of it. You know, I want to work, but it's only a certain amount. And you know, really, it has transformed the way I look at being a leader. And I don't think I'm necessarily not even that great at it, but I've over the years, and been running this business 7 years now, I've begun to encourage the people on my team to do the same thing, because I've seen this actually in job applicants. 10,000 interviews. I ask every single person, well, what is it you're looking for out of your career? And the answers you get back are nobody knows. I mean, the vast majority of people.
Well, I mean, you know, it's interesting. I like to say that most interviews are two people lying to each other.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like, okay, how do I tell you what I think you want to hear?
Yeah.
And that's going on both sides.
Yeah.
And so I like to look at, you know, interviews are almost like coaching conversations where you're actually getting underneath the surface of what does this person truly want in life.
So how do you get them to open up?
Well,
share a technique with us.
Yeah, sure. Often I will actually say that I'll start by saying, look, I think that for the most part, interviews are like generally two people lying to each other and trying to say the right thing. So first of all, I don't want that to be I don't want that. And everyone laughs at that because they all get it. They've all done it. They've all been on both sides of that.
Well, they're thinking it, right? They spent the whole last 20, 30, 40 minutes prepping on how they're going to lie.
Yeah, exactly. And so then it's about saying, like, making it clear that, look, my role as a company leader at 15.5 is to ensure that this is the greatest professional experience of your life. That's what I want to stack the odds for. And we're only going to get to that if we're really figuring out, what do you really want in life, and how can 15.5 be a vehicle for you to realize those dreams in life?
Yep.
And when you're actually at work, how can we stack the odds of you using your strengths on a daily basis? Understanding and operating from your zone of genius, the things that give you energy versus drain your energy. And so that's what we're really all about. And so let's explore, what does that look like? What do you really want?
Yeah.
And that generally sets a different context for the interview. Than most people are used to.
Yeah, that's good. So it helps to begin to get them to open up and to be a little more transparent. And you don't have to.
And I mean, one of the, we do ask of a lot of transparency and vulnerability of our people. Like, working at 15.5 is not for everybody. Some people really want to just, hey, I have the things I do outside of work, and those are completely separate from my work. And, that's just not how we play as a company. We have a lot of respect for that personal boundary, but in general, if you aren't somebody that is going to enjoy doing a gratitude reflection every Monday morning on all company all hands, or opening up on Question Friday, look, like on Friday. So every Friday we play a game called Question Friday.
Okay.
It's a really good virtual ritual for building culture and connection in this new world. And so every month there's a different question master. So somebody owns that for the month. And so each Friday of December, we have TJ Venezuela, who is the question master for December.
Okay.
So last Friday, he asked the question, what is something that you should let go of, but are still holding on to? Beliefs, identities, grudges, resentments. Old furniture. Exactly. I just can't let go of that dresser. And this is voluntary for whoever wants to show up, and we get a good chunk of the company show up every week. And people went there, man. I mean, people were sharing their hearts.
Wow.
And it's exquisite. And those are the moments, because we're 200 people now, and we've been doing this the whole journey. And when we were smaller and doing in-person retreats and stuff, which, by the way, as we move to a virtual norm, it's so critical to at least once a year get together in person for in-person connection. It's what, we've been a hybrid business model from the beginning, where we had offices and remote.
Okay.
And in-person retreats are so important, and they're going to come back. We're going to get out of this.
And I got introduced to that right here. So this is my buddy's place, and we're up skiing on a boys trip every year, and it's right across the street from the Hyatt in Incline Village, and we're at the poker table, and there's like 20 software engineers, and we're like, "What are you guys all doing here?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, we're having a working retreat. We're up here for a week, and we're working." It's like, "Oh, that's cool." Like I'd never thought of it before. I don't know, it was like 7 years ago or something. I was like, "Wow, okay." If I ever do a remote workforce, that's what we're going to do.
Totally, man. I mean, I've taken my team to Mexico, the Redwoods, Florida, Sedona,
you do
Palm
all
Springs.
200 people now?
Yeah. So in January of 2020, before the shite hit the fan, we brought all 200 people. We bought out a hotel for the week. And I like to think of them as transformational business retreats, because I bring the best elements of the kind of interpersonal transformational world to bear and create these opportunities for people to experience things they've never experienced before, alongside strategy and working sessions and all kinds of variety of experiences.
So you're making sure that you're emphasizing to some degree, a large degree, the individual, their needs, their desires, their personal well-being, and making sure that there's a channel constantly available for them to grow as an individual, and then doing all the normal business strategy stuff. And that's something that you're lacing into the daily, weekly, and annual activities.
Look, I think that culture is fundamentally about human needs.
Yeah.
And, there's a great author, Scott Barry Kaufman, who basically, he wrote a book recently called Transcend. And he kind of took a lot of Maslow's unfinished work and carried it to the finish line. And, Abraham Maslow, who, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is really funny. Maslow never actually framed it as a hierarchy of needs and never put it as a pyramid. That was an organizational development consultant who put it in as a pyramid, and then it stuck. And it's actually a complete misrepresentation of Maslow's work, which is just a funny little piece of history.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
But, humans are dynamic.
Yeah.
If you want to build an extraordinary culture that actually unlocks the potential of your people and helps them become better versions of themselves, you need to build a dynamic culture.
Yeah.
And we can't have humans are not two-dimensional. We're not.
You got to facilitate
self-motivated, economically minded robots. That's all we care about is making money. We have needs for community and connection and growth and esteem. And abundance and prosperity.
So how do you you're talking about this in the hiring process, but okay, you're hiring somebody remotely, we're meeting on Zoom. This is how you're meeting, whatever platform you're using, and it's day one or week one, month one. How do you create a structure? I mean, for somebody like me, if there's no structure to this, forget it. I'm not
absolutely not. Okay. So we have a template that we've built into our product, but you can also download. I think we have PDFs on it, but we call it a best self kickoff.
Okay.
And it's a 2-hour meeting between the employee and the manager. And the manager goes through a series of questions to understand this person at an uncommon level. What do they want in life? What is their vision? What are their strengths? How do they like to receive feedback? What is success really going to look like? What are the lessons they've learned from their previous roles that they want to apply in the current one?
Okay. So you're doing this post-hire.
Post-hire.
So because
self-kickoff.
You ask all those questions during the hiring process. Do you think you get a straight answer or an honest answer?
I think that there's some version of it to do in the hiring interview, but what we're really talking about is look, you've made it through. We've chosen you. We're in it together. Yeah. And so it's one of the best ways to kick off the relationship, because you get to understand each other. You get to understand, and it's two ways. The manager is also sharing how they work and what their expectations are. And so that there's actual communication happening. So that's one of the best structures to implement. And then look, we're in a world where a once a year performance review is not enough feedback. We need continuous touch points, check-ins, asynchronous reflections on what's going well, where are we stuck, what do we need help with?
So what's the frequency? How do you structure that frequency?
Yeah. So look, we recommend a weekly check-in, but also bi-weekly or monthly is really good. And that's an asynchronous check-in. So it's, I'm your direct report. I'm going to, at the end of my week, sit down and reflect on that week or that month of what are my wins? What are my challenges? What's going well? How am I feeling at work? How am I tracking on my goals?
And reporting back,
and get some of this information down on a digital,
on paper, process, essentially
digital paper, which then means that we can go into our next one-on-one and you can say, cool, tell me more about this challenge you're facing. Versus spending our one-on-ones kind of wasting our time in the check-in process versus getting deep into the meat of an actual, coaching management conversation.
Let's focus on the challenge. How can I help you overcome it? And, reward or recognize the accomplishments. And it's coming from the individual. They're sharing with those things. And the whole suite that we're looking at is it's
you need continuous feedback. So check-ins and one-on-ones, some form of appreciation, high fives is what we call them in our platform.
Yeah.
And so that's the like weekly kind of the recurring rituals. But then you also want quarterly or biannual deep dive performance reviews. We call them best self reviews because it's actually about forward looking. What do you want?
Yeah. What are
you
your
know,
goals?
what impact do you want to have? How did you do last quarter? How do you want to apply those lessons?
And are they putting in their own personal goals then too, typically in those as well?
Sometimes, yeah. So, like,
So,
look,
I want to go to the gym more often. I want to eat better.
Sure.
I want to
what we
take 4
call
vacations.
we call those self-development objectives.
Yeah.
And so it's applying the same OKR framework that's so effective for business to people's personal lives.
Yeah.
Of saying, yeah, man, look, like, because that's, to go full circle, the work-life balance versus work-life integration is that I want every person at 15.5, whenever they're done with 15.5, I want them to have better relationships with their family, with their siblings.
Yeah.
Not because we're teaching them how to have better relationships with their family, but because we're teaching some of the foundational power skills, rebranded from soft skills.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And communication and empathy and listening and clearly expressing what you want. Those are the things that actually work across all relationships.
Yep. And that's just the last person to tell you we were talking to, the energy levels, right? If you're stuck in the victim mentality, you can move to the dreamer, the visionary, and then the empathetic, helping others, all these different phases, and how do you utilize those? And if it's negative in one area of your life, it'll carry over to the other and vice versa, right? So if you can build it together personally and professionally, then both sides win.
And I mean, look, like helping people shift out of, victim consciousness and into, creator consciousness or whatever we want to call it. Look, that's no easy task. And there's a lot of subtlety and complexity because there are systems of oppression in the world and there are people that get the short end of the stick. And so it's not about saying, hey, that's not true, just bypass that crap. It's saying, no, we need to,
recognize it
with that, but we also want to play the blame game and we don't want to stay stuck in those cycles where it's not actually about leading to a better path.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think, the awareness of all this stuff is, often missing, and that's a big piece, and that's pretty interesting. So, I mean, you answered one of my questions here, but what else are you guys doing to create social bonds in this remote work environment? I think that's a big fear, right? It was a big fear for me. And I'm a very expressive person. I don't hate email. I mean, obviously I do it, but I want to have a one-on-one. I want to have a conversation with people. That's how I express myself, and that's how I communicate my best self. But how do you create those bonds? I mean, we were doing team lunches. I'm also here's something about me is I'm like a pretty dry guy. I'm not super animated or fun or I'm pretty straight to the point, all business. I have a really hard time with this, let's be, kumbaya, super friendly. I want to be, but it's just difficult. So, so I forced it. We had
I challenge you to play the Question Friday game sometime.
Yeah.
Book a 30-minute meeting, bring your team to the table and ask, let's see, what would be a good kickoff question.
I'm going to write this down.
Yeah, please do. Okay, this is a really fun one. If you could snap your fingers and get an advanced degree in any subject, what would it be and why?
Okay. So that's
super fascinating way to learn more about what are the actual passions and curiosities of the people. My chief of staff wanted to get a degree in botany and herbology. And I'm like, what? I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then what's really cool is it's I have that in my brain and now I can think of ways of contributing to her.
Yeah. Next time her birthday comes up, you can buy her book on it.
Exactly.
Right? Or something. Yeah. Yeah, no. And so, we had that structure. We had team lunches. And so we was no work. And so I forced it. To me, everything has to be structured. Otherwise I'm just it's too much for me. But yeah, so I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business leaders, we're afraid of going fully remote because we're going to lose this ability to create.
Sure.
This
Well, listen.
So you mentioned the question Friday. So, what are maybe a couple other things that you do?
Sure. So first of all, I just want to say this is hard.
Yeah.
Fully 100% remote without the ability to meet intermittently in person is very difficult.
Yeah. Because you guys do hybrid. So
anyone that is telling you that it's a piece of cake is high, because I mean, look, like we've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
Lori McLeese, who's a friend who runs Automatic. She's the head of people at Automatic, WordPress. And they have like 900 people, 100% remote.
Wow.
And COVID has really been challenging for them as well, because that in person, the ability to have annual meetups, department meetups, takes so much of the pressure off. And then you're not only remote, you're actually working from home in a pandemic. We're all working
trapped
in a time of, ripping the Band-Aid off of social injustice in this country.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of the political insanity and hyperpolarization.
Yep.
And
we're trapped with it. We can't get away from it because we're just stuck in front of the TV or at home. And that's the only thing we can do is consume this and think about it and be completely run by it. Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing to be doing right now to maintain healthy social relationships in this current dynamic. And but that doesn't mean we can't make effort and we can't try. And so, a couple of other favorite, easy to do things.
Yeah.
Start your meetings with a very short internal state check-in. Just like a 3-word
how you
check-in.
Feeling?
How what's the weather report in 3 words? The internal weather report.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can do different variations of this. Like I'll sometimes do like, what are you proud of?
Yeah.
Or like who's somebody in your life you haven't expressed appreciation to lately? Okay. And you can just do this in like 5 minutes with 10 people.
Yeah.
And it's a moment of shared humanity.
Yeah.
It's a moment of revealing the internal, because it's like, we'll do this and it's like, or we'll do simple. An IEP check-in, which stands for intentional energetic presence. Okay. And you can actually listen to the Anise Kavanagh interview we've done on our podcast, the Best Self-Management podcast, where we go deeper into this. But it's, on 1 to 10, what's your IEP level?
Yeah. What's your energy level? How you feeling?
Yeah. So, it's like, oh, I'm like a 6, the kid didn't sleep at all last night. And I had a fight with my spouse and I'm just kind of hating life right now.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And we don't need to do anything with that.
Yeah.
It's just a moment of
awareness.
Sharing it allows people to be more present, because it's not actually, they're not spending the energy trying to cover their ass and try to look good. Like looking good, covering our ass is a full-time job that none of us can afford to be doing.
The truth will set you free, they say.
The truth shall set you free.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you are honest with others about the things that are most uncomfortable inside of you, it like can go away automatically sometimes.
It's real. I mean, that's
little things.
Brown's whole formula for shame is that shame is like cockroaches, and it scatters when the light goes on.
Yeah.
And the light is revealing it. Is letting other people see us in our darker places. Yeah.
And it just, it's amazing how it takes the pressure off that you're bottled up because you've been hanging on to whatever that energy is that needed to be released. So,
and again, like, I mean, at a very simplistic and high level, I think that's the kind of new paradigm of work that we're moving into, is that work is actually a place that is safe to be seen.
Yeah. Interesting.
And woo. Wow.
Yeah.
Like,
wow. This is
that is a very different type of work than what we've known for thousands of years.
Yeah. So this conversation did not go anywhere where I expected. I thought we were going to talk about like the really nuts and bolts about performance management, which I was like super excited to talk about, which we're not even going to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I know. It's like,
that sounds really boring right now. So
that's
sorry.
why I'm our like chief culture officer and not our chief product officer.
Yeah, exactly. The mechanics of, well, we've had plenty of coaches on that have talked about, rocks and, check-ins and huddles and, all that other stuff. So, listen to one of those podcasts and we can talk about that some more.
Look, I mean, like it really comes down to like dynamic humans need dynamic cultures if they're going to thrive.
Yeah, I like that.
And, like people ask me, okay, well, how do you define dynamism? And it's kind of like, look, if humans are an octagon, we have 8 sides. And I think we're way more dynamic than just 8 sides, but say there's 8 sides to a human being.
Yeah.
Most business cultures have focused on maximizing 2, maybe 3 of those sides.
Yep.
We're gonna pay you money and we're gonna help you with some professional development.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of what we care about.
But yeah, I just went through this, like the wheel of life exercise. I think you've probably done something like this, but I think it's like, it's your, obviously professional. There's a personal, that's like you as a self, your family, there's spiritual, there's
intellectual, emotional, social, quality of life vision, physical, we have so many aspects to us. Every single, like if you're a human being, then you're dynamic.
Yeah. You have those one way or the other.
Even if you're not paying attention to those other aspects of yourself, they're still present and they're probably the very thing that's undermining you. Just like in your first marriage.
Yeah.
Being a workaholic,
on the professional.
Totally focused on the professional is not actually what's going to have Fletcher unlock his genius.
Be my best self. And, it's been a long journey and, you struggle with it every day. And this is eye-opening for me. This isn't like the newest concept ever, but man, just being able to hear you talk about how you integrate culture and do it. It's something I need, like I told you, I'm kind of this dry, like, cookie cutter, this is how I operate with systems and processes. And it's difficult for me to kind of get out of those, but to build in something that helps encourage everybody, including myself, to focus on the multiple factors of being a person and being able to feel comfortable sharing that with others on the team, I think is really important. And, it's inspiring me to do a better job of that. And
look, like a really cool thing to do is just like that person had you write out a 10-year vision for your life. And it was like eye-opening.
Yeah.
Is do that with every single one of your employees.
Yeah.
Create time and space on the clock for them to create a compelling life vision for themselves.
Yeah.
What do they want? Yeah. Where do they want to be in 3-5 years?
Yeah. Yeah. And how can this career opportunity help them get there? And what else can we do to help them get there? Could it be beyond the work itself, but, by like what you're talking about, creating an environment where people can share and be open and maybe get some of those uncomfortable pressures out in the open so that they can be relieved of them to some degree, hopefully, or another, hopefully a lot, right?
There's a really cool exercise called a Givitas, a giving circle.
Okay.
And it is comes out of the University of Michigan. Adam Grant actually helped develop it.
Okay.
And it is a really cool exercise, and you can do it in person, but you can do a virtual version of it as well. And I'm probably going to actually try out in our first virtual retreat in January. But basically, so this last retreat, what you do is you put sticky notes, like large sticky notes, up on the wall in a room.
Yeah.
Each person has one large sticky note.
Okay.
And you make one personal ask and a professional ask. So something you need in your personal life.
Okay.
And something you need in your professional life.
Okay.
Like a request.
Yeah. And so
and this goes like everything from, I want to switch from sales to product. And so I need a product mentor to guide me there.
Yeah.
To my mother just had kidney failure and needs a kidney donor.
So it could be big.
Like seriously, like those are
major.
both real examples of what people have put down.
Anybody got a blood type, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got an extra kidney, please.
The full spectrum. And what we don't know is we don't know all of the other stories of our people. We don't know if there's a somewhat superficial request they have or something that really need. One person wrote, my father just got diagnosed with cancer and I would really appreciate prayers for his healing. This is like,
and everybody can offer that.
And then what happens is everybody walks around the room. They write their own version, what their own requests, and then everybody walks around the room. And if you can contribute to somebody's request, you go and write your name and how to follow up.
Okay, good. So then they can have a personal one-on-one connection and take it from there.
Yes. Yeah. And all of a sudden we're building a culture of contribution.
Yeah.
People
helping others.
Helping each other. Yeah. Because we don't, the cool thing is when you hire somebody, you're not just hiring them, you're hiring their entire network.
Yep.
You're hiring access to all of that person's network.
Yeah.
And you don't know who people know or who they're connected.
Yeah. Well, and their network affects also their well-being too, right? It goes back to this, our energies going in the right direction. And, if we can have a positive influence on their personal network and vice versa, personal network can have a positive influence on us, right?
Yeah. It all comes down to, can we be a net positive contribution to our employees' lives versus a net negative contribution?
Yeah.
And that goes way beyond money.
Yeah. Okay. I got like two more questions for you. So one, I definitely got it. I'm dying to ask because I think you're the best person to ask. And I know this kind of gets back to the boring stuff, but how do you know if somebody's cut out for working in a remote environment?
Well, I mean, it's funny is that nobody in 2020, everybody has to be.
Yeah.
Right. In some sense, we're all getting our ass kicked through the boot camp of working remotely.
Yeah.
I think that are you talking about like in terms of in the interview process? How do you whether this person's going to actually be successful?
Yeah. I would imagine some people, it's just not a fit for them. Right.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I mean, for the most part, people are decently okay at self-sorting themselves.
Yeah. When it comes to this.
Yeah. When it comes to, I mean, it's interesting. We're in a new world, but pre-COVID, generally people that were applying to work remotely knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And knew what they were getting into.
Yeah.
Now, before we would ask, do you have any experience working remotely?
Yeah.
Now everybody's going to get to say yes to that.
Yeah.
So
how'd you feel about it? You might get a lot. You might get a lie back in response, right?
I mean, I think as the world returns to some equilibrium and companies embrace a hybrid model where there's way more. I mean, look, there's normalization around working from home is a permanent effect from COVID. Even when everybody's vaccinated or it's a distant memory, companies that were like, no, there's no way we'll ever allow remote work are going to allow some aspects of remote work.
Yeah.
And so
many more will for sure. Yeah.
And what we want to, it kind of goes back to, again, of really understanding what do people really want and how can we help them have extraordinary lives as well as extraordinary careers? People are going to know if they liked working remotely or if they hated it.
Yeah.
So the level of it's tapping into people's self-awareness around, did they thrive in the benefits of working from home, of being able to go and hug your kids in between meetings and cook your own lunch and not spend, 2 hours a day commuting and be in an office environment of constant distraction when your job is actually better served through deep work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your software developers, man, leave those guys alone.
Leave them alone. Turn off Slack,
Yeah.
And so that I would hope that people are going to be more honest about working remotely. Now, there is, of course, counter motivators, right? Maybe I don't actually like working from home, but I do like living in the mountains. And so I'm going to try to I'm going to kind of, again, lie and say, oh, I love working remotely because I love the cheap rent and I like connection with my family, but I'm actually suffering socially.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that like going deeper into, it's almost like top grading for like the experience of working remotely. Like,
Yeah.
cool. Tell me about your setup. Tell me about how you maintained social connections in your life. Tell me about, you know, what were the biggest challenges? What did you like?
What was your biggest success as working remotely, right? You
Yeah.
know, or because I like that question. And see, the problem with working remotely is you got dogs barking in the background. That's just going to be a new norm, right?
It's, you know, kids running in, dogs.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's not even kind of it. I think it's actually beautiful because, you know, you have these high powered executives that are embarrassed when their naked kid runs into the room.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, oh God. And all of a sudden,
it's such a human condition. I mean, like that happens every day at home.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's where my hope is that we move as a business community is towards more whole humanity.
Yeah.
Recognizing our inherent wholeness, that dimensionality, serving the whole person, designing our companies and our cultures to be of service to the whole person, and having some compassion and grace for each other to not be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I think it's really important that, you know, this is an important message to be sharing with folks. And, you know, I know it can be difficult. It's been a difficult journey for me. I'm nowhere close to achieving, you know, the thing, many of the things that you've talked about, but,
nor am I, you know, it's like we have our own, it's a never ending hike up and in.
Yeah. Well, with anything in life, it's a constant journey. And so, but I think the awareness piece, you know, talking about it, thinking about it, and, you know, it's definitely something that I'm really glad that I got to have this conversation. I hope everybody else enjoyed it. I'm sure, you know, everybody can take something from this.
I'll just hold because, you know, some people, we're all at varying degrees of proximity to the ideal, but I'll just end with a vote for idealism. And not in the sense that we have our head in the clouds, but in the sense that we are holding a higher ideal about what our lives and our work can be in service towards. And that North Star can give us direction and orientation in life, even if we never achieve it, even if we never get to a place where our companies fully embrace humanity and work on the entire spectrum of
it affects your decision making, right? So if you have that North Star and you're moving towards it, then you're going to make more decisions that are in alignment with getting you there. And, you know, like, you know, my exercise, my personal vision, I mean, that's what I've found to be true. And, you know, I think sometimes it's difficult to identify what your North Star is. I see that a lot as a problem. I mean, I think I was very lucky. I look back at that exercise. I'm like, it's the same exact thing 7 years ago. Like it has not changed one bit for me, but it goes back to, you know, lots of people maybe haven't found it yet. So I think some of the things that you've talked about can create a stage or framework to help people discover what that is. Because that's probably one of the most difficult parts is just trying to figure out what your North Star is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, it's like, as a coach, you know, we often will say like, there's two types of people in the world. There's people who know what they want and people who don't know how to get what they want.
Yeah. And that's because they don't know they haven't figured out what they want.
Yeah. I mean, there's not knowing what you want, but then there's the deep work. I forget who said it, but that knowing what you want is a rare psychological achievement. And I just love that because it does take work. I mean, some people have a little bit easier time of it, but like it is a process. So like,
and it's trial and error like anything else. I mean, I found it through failure.
Yeah. Most people do have.
Yeah.
Like that's like, oh, right. Maybe it's designed that way. Maybe our struggle and our suffering is actually part of the design that propels us forward. Damn it. Oh, you know, who designed this system?
So, all right. I always just ask the end, you know, 1, 2, 3 things that we could do tomorrow to implement our lives to, you know, help, in this case, I guess, achieve a better social bond relationship, create a better culture in our business.
Okay, so first, you need to start with shifting how you see your people.
Okay.
Stop
Change your
seeing
mindset.
them as employees and start seeing them as fully fledged human beings with dreams, hopes, desires, fears, traumas, personal baggage, and ambitions.
Awesome.
I
Change that mindset.
change that mindset. See them as dynamic human beings, and then start actually getting curious about how you can create a more dynamic culture that fulfills more of those needs.
Start asking those questions.
Start asking those questions, start making space for it's almost, I kind of hate saying this because I hate the term, but it's almost, we need to be life coaches. Like we need to turn our businesses into life coaching businesses for our employees, which I despise even saying that because I hate the term life coach, but it's about taking an interest and becoming concerned with leaving our people better off than we found them.
Yeah.
And that is, there's no cookie cutter approach to that because every person is unique and has the different spread of which needs are already fulfilled. But then figure out, how can I give these people more than I'm going to take? Because I'm going to take a lot. I'm going to take enormous, as a business owner,
a minimum of a third of their life.
Yeah. And so how can I give them more than I'm taking?
Yeah. I love it.
Stay in that inquiry.
I love it. So change the mindset, ask the questions, and begin the journey. Is really, you can just start right there. And even if it's just one step at a time, I think that's great. And that's where I'm at. I'm, taking baby steps that direction. But having conversations like this, helps me and hopefully everybody else continue to propel that forward. So where do we find you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Shane Metcalf on LinkedIn. You can also follow our podcast, the Best Self-Management Podcast. Though, depending on when this episode airs, we are doing a relaunch, and it's going to probably be something like the Pioneers of HR or HR Pioneers, to be determined. So stay tuned for that. But if you just follow me and if you sign up for if you subscribe to the Best Self-Management Podcast, you'll get all of those notifications.
Yeah. Okay, good. And everything will be on the page here in the emails and the social. We'll provide links. So if you missed it, guys, it'll all be there. You can come back to it, forever etched in stone. And Shane, this was a really fun conversation. It didn't go any way I expected it to, but I'm glad we had it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Fletcher. Thanks so much, man.